today's episode, we are going to be fetching the messages that we sent in the last episodes inside of our chat room. So if we jump into this channel QA user 4, for example, as you can see, the chat room just consists of a bunch of stop data that allows us to be able to display these components. Our focus today is going to be on actually getting the actual text messages from the backend and displaying those text messages inside of our chat room. And so for us to do that, let us jump right into Xcode, and we're going to go right into our message service struct, which is, as you remember, the object that's going to be responsible for sending messages and decoding messages. And we're going to create a function, honestly, that's going to help us handle this. And let's just call it get messages method. And the get messages method, of course, it's going to require a specific channel. So we're going to say get messages for a specific channel. And what else do we need? I think that's all that we need. And of course, we want to return a completion handler. The completion handler is going to return an array of message items. So we're going to do escaping because we are making a networking request. And so what do we want to do? Well, it's pretty simple. We just want to go to our backend and grab all the messages that belongs to a specific channel. So we're going to say Firebase constant. We're going to say message ref. And, we're going to say, actually, not message ref. We're going to say Firebase constant. Let's see, guys. Yes, Firebase constant, message ref, and then we need the channel ID, channel.id, because if you remember, if I jump into our initial pseudocode that we did a couple of episodes ago, we have the setup where, we have our channel messages, then we have the channel ID and the message ID. So that's the paths that we're currently trying to walk down. So we're going to have channel ID, and then we're just going to grab all the messages that is in that specific channel. And the way I'm going to do that is by applying an observer, and I'm just going to say, I want the observer with the cancel. I'm going to say observer. I want it to look for child added. So anytime there's a new update in that specific node, I want this closure to fire. So we have our snapshot. We're going to have our error. And for now, let's just print a simple error that says, failed to get messages for, and let's just print the channel.title, right? And what do we want here? Well, we want to return, actually our completion handler is not complete. So we want to actually return an array of message item, right? An array of messages. And how are we going to decode that? Well, first we need to grab that dictionary. So we're going to say message dictionary. And message dictionary is going to be of type snapshot value. And we know it's going to be of type string to type any, right? If not, we're going to return out of the scope. And then we're going to loop through our messages dictionary. So we're going to say for each key value pair. Okay. And actually, this is not the message dictionary. This is the dictionary itself. This is the top level dictionary. And I'll explain all of that in just a second. This is going to be the message dictionary, is the value. And I know it's going to be of type string to type any, so I'm just going to false cast it. I guess we can optionally cast it and default to an empty dictionary if that casting fails. So let us print this and make sure everything is working. So I'm going to say message dictionary is this message dictionary from this value. And why is this yelling at us? Oh yeah, this is now dictionary, not message dict. Okay, so let's put message dictionary in the console so we can see and get that information. And then I'm actually going to change this from child added. Let's change this to value. Let's observe value instead of child added. And let's go into our chat room view model. So let's create a new method now that episodes actually get messages. So I'm just going to create a private function called get messages. And it's just going to use the message service. It's going to call on the message service, and it's just going to fire the get message function. We're going to pass in the channel. And, we're going to come back to this later. For now, we just want to make sure our print statement is working. So we're going to fire this inside of the listen to out states because we only want this to fire if a user is authenticated, right? And we're also going to break the retain cycle because, we're good developers and we're not trying to have memory leaks all over the place. All right, let us run our project on the simulator now, and we should get this printing of message dictionary for the specific channel. So let's check out QA user 4. Let's go back to Xcode. Look at that. We have a bunch of print statements. It says owner UID, type, timestamp, and that is awesome. So if we jump to our backend, and I'm going to try to explain what's going on right now. If we jump to our backend and our Firebase projects, so this is a Firebase project. What we're really doing is we're doing channel messages. We know the channel for QA user 4, the channel ID is this guy right here that ends in TMM. And then we're getting all the messages in there. So like we have this, which is a dictionary, right? The key is NUZEP, right? And then the value are this key value pairs of the messages. And so that's essentially what's going on here. That's why we say we have a top level dictionary, the key is the channel ID, and then we are looping through it, getting the value. We know that's the messages dictionary. And so the next thing I want us to do is actually sort of what we did, like what we did in the channel item. I want us to actually just pipe in the messages dictionary into the message item and not have to do anything else. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go to the message item. We're going to open up that file, the message item file, which is inside of our chat models folder. And we're going to create an extension right up here, and we're just going to have that extension be on the message item. And I'm going to create a custom initializer that is specifically going to be for our messages. So first off, it's going to ask for a message ID, and then it's going to ask for a dictionary, which is of string value, string key, and the value of type any. And the first things that we want to do is we're going to say self.id is equals to this ID. And the reason I'm passing in this ID is because I want the ID of the messages to be the key. So if we jump back here, the ID is each of this individual key, not a random UUID in SwiftUI. So I'm going to remove this UID constant right here because we already have an ID in the backend. And actually, no, I'm going to remove it, and I'm going to say it's of type string. So I'm not going to assign the value. I'm just going to declare the type. And now the next thing for us is we're going to start fixing some of this. So I'm going to say text is going to be inside of the dictionary, and I know the key is of type text. And I'm going to cast it as an optional string and return an empty value if there's nothing fun. And what else do we have? We have a type, and I also know that's inside of the dictionary, and that's going to be of type, and the type is going to be of type string as well. And if there's nothing there, I'm just going to default it to type of text. And I'm also going to do what else? We have our direction, which right now we're passing in a direction, but really we don't actually want to pass in a direction. Really what we want to do is we want this direction to be a computer property. And when I'm referring to direction, I'm referring to this logic right here. Let me exit out of Xcode. This logic is responsible for determining if it's an incoming message, right? Or if it's a message that we sent. And so that is actually going to be a computer property. And so I'm going to change this from a constant to a computer property. And what the direction is really going to do is the logic for it is going to go as follow. So we're going to say, it returns a message direction. And all we want to do is we're going to say if the owner UID is equals to, so we're going to need a new UI, we're going to need a new property called owner UID. I mean, you could call it sender UID, it doesn't really matter. Again, if we go back to Firebase console, each of this message has something called an owner UID property, and that's just the person that sent the message, the user ID of the person that sent the message. So for us to know if a message is being sent by us or if it's a message that is coming to us, we're going to say if the owner UID is equals to auth, we're going to use Firebase. So let's import our Firebase module. Then we're going to say if auth, that's auth, the current user, right, the UID, if the owner UID is equals to the currently logged in user, essentially, then we're going to say it's sent by us, right? That makes sense. It means the message was sent by us. If it's not equals to our user ID, then that means we are receiving that message. Okay, so we're going to fix a bunch of this placeholders issues, but for now, let us go back to our dictionary right here. This is our extension. So we now have our type as of type string, and now we need to grab one last thing, which is going to be the owner UID. So we're going to say self.ownerUID is equals to our dictionary. We're going to use the key of owner UID that we already created as a static property, and we're going to say it's of type string as well. We're going to let's do optional casting just to be safe, and if there's nothing in there, we're just going to return an empty string. But again, these things are always going to have properties. So the next thing we want to do, why is this yelling at us that property is not of type string? Let us think for a second, guys. Okay, so the reason the type is yelling at us that it's not of type string is because it's actually correct. This is of type message type, right? But we know we're storing it as a string in the backend. And in order for us to do that conversion, let us jump into our message type. So I'm going to command click into the message type enum, and I'm going to create some sort of a, let's think here, guys. Let's create some sort of a convenience initializer, and it's just going to take in a string value, right? And I'm going to use that to create this message type. And all I'm just going to do is I'm going to switch on the string value, and I'm just going to say case.text. I'm going to say self as equals to the text and case.image. So we don't have an image yet. I'm just going to say case.photo, and then self is equals to photo, case. What do we have? Video. Self is video, and I'm just going to do a bunch of this, and I'm going to have you guys pause the video and fill in the rest of the information. Okay, so we have our cases filled out. And again, the reason I'm not making this message type of type string, as I said in the last episode, is because this message type is going to also have admin messages, and those are not actually strings. So it makes sense for us to create some sort of a convenience initializer that allows us to be able to create this message type. So let's go back to our message item. And inside of our message item, so right now we have, type is going to be, let me see right here. So I have message type is of type, right? And I know it's going to come back as of type string. So I'm going to cut this. I'm going to say let's type is equals to dictionary is of type string. And then I'm going to say self.type is going to be message type. And now I'm going to pass in using the convenience initializer that we just created for the message type. So now we're initializing our message type for this message item. Okay, so now we're done with this sort of like dictionary mappings. Now let us fix a bunch of this placeholder issues. So I'm just going to comment this out. I'm going to fix a bunch of this stuff, and I'm going to have you guys pause the video and sort of, copy the code. So all right, folks. So after fixing our placeholder errors, and all I did really was just replace the properties with the ID property and the owner UID property. And like I said, you could pause the video and sort of just type out this code that fixes the stub messages and fixes the send placeholder and receive placeholder stub items. And so with that done, we're going to jump right back into our message service. So message service. And now what we really need to do here is we're just going to say, so let's think for a second. So now let's create a message. So we're going to say a message, right, is equals to message item. And all we're going to do now is we're going to ask for the dictionary one. And so the key, the ID is going to be the key, right? And then the value is going to be the message dictionary. And now let us create a messages array up here. So we're going to do, well, actually, we're just going to do it right in here. Doesn't have to be that far out. Messages. And messages is just going to be an array of message items. And then we're going to say messages, append, message. Okay, and then for our completion handler, we're going to say if messages. Actually, do we even need to do that? Let's just return this for now. Let's just do completion handler, and let's just return our messages that we just appended. And I'm going to remove this print statement because I'm going to have this just do its thing. And let's see, it's saying variable captured by closure before being used. Let's default this to an empty array. Yeah. Okay. So now let's go back to our message. Our chat room view model, sorry guys. And inside of our chat room view model, we're going to create a property to hold our messages. Also, by the way, this current user doesn't need to be published. This can actually be a private property. So we're going to remove the publish marker. And then we're going to go up here and create a publish. And we're going to call it messages. And as you can imagine, it's just going to be an array of message item. That's really all. And then we're going to go inside of this, our get messages method. First off, let's break off this retain cycle by passing a weak self. And then we're going to say self.messages, right, is equals to messages. Okay, now let us run our project. Or before we actually run our project, let us print stuff before we do anything. It's always better to print. So we're going to say messages this time around, and this is just going to be the array of messages. But then I'm going to map it so I can get the actual text. So I'm going to say $0.text. So this is going to create an array of strings that each message contains. So let's run our simulator. Go to our channel tab screen, go to QA user channel, and let's go back to Xcode and let's see what it prints. I think I have the wrong filters on, but there we go. It has this as a print statement. So it has hey there, hey there, my friend, and aha. That's the list of messages that came through the observer. And so now for us to actually display this on the screen, let's kill the simulator and let's go into our message list controller. And so I believe the message list controller is inside of our channel. If I'm not wrong, is it a channel or chat room? I think it's inside of our chat room and inside of our views folder. This is why organization matters a lot, guys. The folder starts to get really massive. So inside of our messages list controller, we need to be able to show the array of messages that we're getting back from the backend. And right now, inside of our table view delegates and data source, we're actually using the stub data, which is the message item that stub data. That's actually what's powering those specific components that we're able to see on the screen. I'm trying to wait for the SwiftUI preview to do its thing. Come on. Sometimes it's like, all right, yep. So this stop data is what's powering this. Okay, so now we want to change that and make sure we're getting the actual data from the back end. And the way we're going to do that is, honestly, do we have a view model injected into this? So we currently do not have a view model injected into this, what am I talking about? Into this messages list controller. And so we're going to fix that. We're going to come up here and we're going to ask for a view model. So we're going to create a convenience initializer that takes in a view model. And this view model is going to be of type chat room view model. And then I'm going to come down here and create an actual view model, which is our chat room view model. So all we're trying to do now is we're trying to pass in that chat room view model into this messages list controller, which is what contains this list. So then we're going to say self.viewModel is equals to this view model. Okay. everything is good. Let's see what's going on. And then, of course, we need to do some super init stuff. This is just UIKit boilerplate code. So we're going to pass nil, bundle is nil, and we're going to autofill this and let Xcode fill in the required initializer that it's asking for. So now we have our initializers passed in, and Xcode should yell at us at a bunch of places, which is good because we want to pass in that view model. So inside of our messages list view, which is this UI view representable that converts our UIKit code to SwiftUI, it's now asking for a view model. So I'm going to pass that in here. So let's think for a second. What do we need to do? So really, we need to pass in a view model from here, but that also means we need to ask for a view model here. So I'm going to create this. I'm going to ask for a view model here as well. I'm going to say chat room view model, and let's just create another convenience initializer here. Okay. So now we're just going to pass in that view model right here. And really, this messages list view, this UI view representable, is actually being called inside of our chat room screen. So we're going to fix that pretty quickly. And for this one, I'm just going to pass in chat room view model inside of the preview, put a placeholder so everything is happy. And let's jump into that error. Yep. Let's go back. I'm going to go back. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to jump back to the error, and I'm going to fix this error right there. Okay, so just making the messages list controller placeholder happy. So there's still an error. Let's go to that error, and it's going to be in the chat room screen. So now the chat room screen is saying, hey, you said this message list view should have a chat room view model. Well, lucky for us, we have that view model right here. So all that we need to do is pass in that view model to our message list view. I know that's a lot, and that sounds like a little bit confusing, and I'm going to explain what we're doing step by step in just a little bit. So, okay, our preview is working. That's great. So really what's going on is we have this chat room screen, right, which is the top components to SwiftUI view, and then we have this message list view, which is also a SwiftUI view, but it's a UI view representable. So if you jump into it, if you remember in the last couple of episodes, I don't know how many episodes ago that was, maybe 10 ago, we have this UI view representable, which is just a SwiftUI way of converting a UIKit view into a SwiftUI view. And that UIKit view that we're converting is this message list controller, which is a UIKit UI table view controller that we're using to power our chat, because as we said in a couple of episodes ago, table view controllers in general, or just UIKit collection views in general, are way more performance than, using like a lazy VStack. And so now we're just taking that view model all the way from the chat room screen, which is all the way from this chat room screen. We're injecting the data into this message list view, the SwiftUI view, and then we're injecting it into our UIKit view, which is this message list controller, which is of type UI view controller. And essentially it's just dependency injection 3 layers deep. And, maybe not necessarily the best way to necessarily do this. Like, I'm sure we could use like injected variables and stuff like that, or environment variables, but this pretty much works because we're just passing it through the initializers. And now all we need to do is we're going to take this view model. We're going to go into our number of rows and sections in the table view section, and we're going to say view model dot messages that we have in that view model dot count. Okay. The next thing we're going to do is, instead of using this message array, now we're going to say view model, instead of using the stub array, the messages, and it's going to be the index path dot row. So this gets us each individual messages in that row. Of course, our SwiftUI preview is going to be broken now because we're trying to communicate with the backend, and we are not authenticated, or allowed to do that because we're in preview mode. Our current user is not authenticated in preview mode. So let us run this on the simulator and let us see what's going to happen. So I'm hoping we're going to have, like an actual list of messages. So let's go into QA user 4. If we go in there, oh, actually, yeah, I know why we're not having messages. I'm thinking in SwiftUI. So we need to reload data. So collection view, or just UIKit views in general, it's imperative programming, and everything, you sort of have to do everything manually. So this is one of those beauties where you really see why SwiftUI is such a big deal. So now we need to set up some sort of an observer where essentially anytime, so if we go into our chat room view model, anytime there's messages is being set right here, inside of this message list controller, we want to get that information and use it to refresh our list. And the way we're going to do that is by using combine. And so I'm going to go up here and I'm going to import combine, the combine framework. Combine. And essentially what we want to do is, we want to set up some sort of a listener. So I'm just going to call it, I'm going to come down here and create a method, and it's going to be a private method. I'm going to say setup message listeners. I think that's a good name. And so what is message listeners really going to do using combine, right? Essentially, we want to listen to that messages array, and that messages array is already a publisher. So if we go into our chat room view model, this messages right here, this published variable, this published property wrapper, it actually means it's already a publisher. So all we need to do is just sync into it right here. And this is the way we're going to do it. We're going to say view model, and we're going to say $messages, dot $messages, right? As you can see, publisher. And all that we need to do is just sync, which is just meaning we want to receive those messages. And so now we're going to receive those messages, and all I want to actually do now is I'm just going to reload the data. So I'm just going to say table view, I think that's what we called it, dot reload data. And this is going to be messages, but we don't even care about the messages coming through this array. And then we're going to say self. So because this is going to be creating a strong reference, let us break that by making it a weak reference. Okay, so now reload data, and we need to store this in a cancelable, which is just Combine's way of holding references to subscriptions. And the first thing I'm going to do is, before we even do that, I would like for us to create a delay for when we refresh the view. So I'm going to debounce it by, let's say milliseconds. And, let's put a delay. I'm going to create a delay up here of 200 milliseconds. So let's just delay it by that. And then we want to, of course, receive it on the main thread. So we're going to say dispatch queue.main. We don't want to reload data or refresh UI views on the background thread. And so now let's start this subscription. And it's very easy. All we got to do is just come up here and let us create a subscription. It's set to all our subscriptions. And this is going to be a set of type any cancelable. And of course, we're going to initialize that subscription. So now all we need to do here is we're just going to store this. So we're going to store in the subscriptions. Okay, so now we need to call this setup message listeners inside of our view did load. So this is like UIKit lifecycle method that is going to be fired whenever this view controller is basically loaded into memory for the first time. So we're going to call this setup message listeners. And also let's just create a deinitializer, just as we've been doing when it comes to Combine. It's always just a good practice to clean up after yourself when you have all these publishers firing all over the place. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to say subscriptions for each. And, for each subscription, I want to cancel it because that means this view is no longer, on the screen. And I'm just going to remove all. Okay, so now that we have our setup going, what do we need to do? Well, let's run our project on the simulator now and validate that all of this code that we just wrote is working as expected. So let us go into our channel tab view and let us click on QA user 4 and look at that, boys and girls. We have our messages coming through. And I can already tell, looks like there's a bunch of duplicates. And we're going to fix that really quickly. As you can see, it says A there, but that is not really saying A there. It's just saying hello world. And I think I know why. So if we go into our message list controller, if we scroll all the way down here inside of our bubble text view, and if we jump into our bubble text view, as you can see, we're actually not using the message, the text from the message. So bubble text view, make sure you replace this magic string with item.message, .text. Sorry, guys. And again, the way I jump into this, by the way, if you're not familiar, you hold the command key and you just right click into that, or you is that left click or right click? Left click into that. Yep. And so that, jumps you to that specific file. So now if we run our project, we should see the actual text in our chat room. So if we go to our channel tab screen, we have hi, let's go right there. Look at that. We have a hi, and we're going to fix this. I know what's really going on here. And let us just enter a text really quickly. Let's say, ha, ha, ha. Let us send. And as you can see, it's coming up at the top, and that's okay. But at the very least, we are actually seeing our messages, and we are decoding it. So honestly, I'm going to wrap up this episode here. And the next coming episode, we are actually going to properly sort these messages so that, the latest message is at the bottom and the most oldest message is at the top, as you would expect for a chat. And also, let us put the actual background image for this chat room. So, for example, in one of the completed source codes for us, if you go into a specific channel, or actually, is it this? It's this one. I'm sorry, guys. I have a lot of simulators running. So if we go into this specific source code, for example, and let's say we go in here, as you can see, it has this really nice background, which is very pretty, and it looks really nice on dark mode as well. So in the next coming episode, we're going to handle a lot of those, UI-related functionalities and clean up our chat room and get it looking nice and pretty. So that's it for this episode. Thanks for watching, guys. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.